Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Path to Partner event with myself, Mike Jones. I'm the Senior Regional Director for Reed in the Northern Home Counties, and I've been here for 15 years, which sounds great, but it's actually been dwarfed by our guest speaker today, Bevan, who is the Private Business Partner and Watford Senior Partner for PwC, who's been at PwC for 25 years. So, hope I'm not making you feel old there, Caroline.
How do I respond to that, Mike? It started with a compliment, and then I think you definitely did imply that I was getting on a bit. Really tone to set.
I think it's like a fine wine, Caroline. I think that's what we'll go with. That's what we'll go with.
I love that. I love that analogy. Look, thank you, Mike, very much for inviting me to run this event with you. Certainly delighted to be here and share my experience about the Path to Partner, in the hope that will be of interest and of help to your listeners who are today and are considering where they might go in their careers. In terms of an introduction, as you say, I have been with the firm for 25 years, which sounds like a long time, but actually, because we're a big business, I've been able to do lots of different things during those 25 years. So it's a long time, but there's been a lot going on. And actually, as I look back, it's been because of the diversity of the opportunity and the incredible people that I've had the chance to work with and meet as clients over the years that I have stayed here for so long. As you said, I'm currently based in PwC's new Watford office, which I'm very excited about. It's a project that I've been leading for a while, and despite COVID's best effort, we managed to open doors on the new office just before Christmas. Really exciting. Outside of work, I'm a mum of 3. I live in St Albans, and I don't know about you, Mike, but I had 20 minutes on the patio in the sun yesterday, celebrating the fact that all of my lovely children, who I do love dearly, are now back in school, and we were just sort of enjoying the sound of silence. So that was a particular pleasure this week.
I totally agree, and I've even enjoyed the sound of the rain pitter-pattering on my window today, given that I can now hear it because the kids are at school. So
quiet.
Indeed, and I think I'm really excited about this webinar today because it's going to be inspiring to hear from you, Caroline, and it is so nice to not talk about COVID or Meghan Markle, actually, for that matter, right now. And the royal family.
Let's not touch on that.
Move away from it. So as said, we are going to talk about Caroline's glittering career and some of the hurdles that she's faced and some of the biggest achievements that she's had. Just before we get into that, we have a Q&A section, so any questions, post those on there because we will get around to those at the end of this webinar. Also, just a quick point about Reed. We are often wrongly known as a generalist high street recruiter, but Reed was started by Sir Alec Reed in 1960, and Sir Alec was a qualified accountant who worked at Gillette's head office, and our business started off by recruiting accountants. And we have dedicated practice recruiters throughout the country. So a lot of the people joining this call today are people working within practice. We are here to help you further your career or simply offer advice. So please get in touch with us after this webinar. But yeah, so Caroline, let's move on to you most importantly. So you've given us a bit of an intro to yourself and PwC. If you want to add more to that, please do. But also tell us about PwC's recent move to Watford.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, in terms of PwC, probably most people have heard of us. So we're a global multidisciplinary firm. So we're organised around lines of service. So we've got 5 main lines of service, being audit, tax, risk assurance, consulting and deals. And obviously we're a very client-centric business. So the thing that really binds all of us together at PwC, no matter where we sit in the business, is about creating value for our clients. And that's really, as I said, what excites me and what has kept me at PwC for so long, the opportunity to work with some amazing clients as part of a really amazing team and create value in that way. We're obviously a training organisation, so we recruit hundreds of trainees into our business each year. We have a very well-established and well-known graduate training scheme, but we do also take people in straight out A-levels. Like many other businesses, we are exploring different types of mentorship options, and we do also recruit in experienced hires depending on where the need is in the business. In terms of my particular new local office, so that has come about as a result of combining what was our St Albans and Uxbridge offices into a new practice of scale based out of Watford. And as with most investments that businesses make, the reason why we've done this is because we think it's a really exciting local market, and a great market opportunity that we've got ahead of us. But I mean, relating that back to the session today, I mean, what happens when you face off against an exciting market is the business grows, and therefore the opportunities for people in the business grow. So I do think that we've got some exciting years ahead, both for the talent we've got in the business at the moment, and also for the additional talent that we will be needing to bring in. So very exciting times, and lovely to be talking to you now as we've got a roadmap out of COVID as well, and hopefully all of that starts to open up again.
Perfect. And you know, that's great, because not a lot of people will have known that PwC have got this great amazing new office in Watford, and there's obviously a lot of people on this line who I'm sure are itching at the chance to work at PwC, so a nice plug there for you, Caroline. In terms of moving on to you specifically then, so quite a wide ranging question, but just take us through your career path with PwC.
Yeah, okay. So my career path starts back in 1995. When I joined what was then the Norwich office of Coopers and Lybrand. So obviously we're not Coopers and Lybrand anymore, we're PwC, and our Norwich office actually doesn't exist. It merged into our Cambridge practice a little while ago. But I trained in what was our public sector audit practice. And that whole package of the local office was a lovely place to train. I felt very well supported, but still had access to really good opportunities because I was part of this big firm. And I think what I really valued about entering the firm and training in the audit practice is that when you're auditing the business, you get immediate access, even as a junior member of staff, to really quite senior people out at our clients. So really fantastic learning ground, but with lots of support as well. So that was where I started, and I actually joined the firm off the back of a modern languages degree. So I didn't enter the profession having studied finance and accounting. I came in having learned how to speak French and Italian and all the literature that went with it. So slightly different to what people might expect. I have a very clear memory actually of my very first training event at PwC, which was at a hotel in Coventry, with a partner who was coming to the end of his career, standing up and saying, "Look, me for all of this time is that I feel that I've had lots of fresh challenges along the way, and as I look back now, that's definitely something that I would endorse about my journey." But anyway, audit was a great training ground, but as soon as I qualified, I was tempted into the world of tax, which for me at that time was because I wanted to move from public sector into the more corporate world. And it was the move into tax that then opened up the first of the really, really exciting opportunities that I've had with the firm. And this was, when was that? It was about 1998, 1999, so a long time ago. And the firm then was experimenting with using digital as a means to deliver tax advice to clients. So we were ahead of our times, and actually the experiment kind of failed. But we learned a lot from it, and it moved us on in terms of knowledge management, which then opened up a new path for me. And I then moved from Norwich to Uxbridge, to Birmingham, and eventually into London via knowledge management into our tax practice, advising privately owned businesses. So a lot of diversity in the opportunity that I had, even in those early years. I was a manager at this point, rising senior manager. And what was really significant about that sort of pivot point into London is that that's the time when I was starting a family as well. So fair to say that the 10 years that followed from that, my feet didn't really touch the ground, but they didn't touch the ground in a really positive, exciting way. And I have to say that's something that I've tried to hold on to as I've moved through my career, because when you're in a large professional services firm, it is fast paced. There's lots of opportunity for you to grab. It's quite exciting. And I think you have to keep yourself focused. If it's for you, you have to keep yourself focused on how fantastic it is to have the career and have the family as well, and embrace the busyness that goes with it, because you will be very busy if you want to have all of that. But you certainly won't be alone in the juggling. There's lots of people around to support you along the way. Anyway, during that sort of approximately 10-year period, I progressed from manager to senior manager through to director as well. And it was as a director that I got what I would say is access to my next really, really exciting opportunity, which was moving from our private business tax practice into our financial services practice. And the opportunity for me then was to build another new business effectively within PwC, which was taking our great financial services credibility and footprint, combining it with our capabilities around private businesses, and building a new business working with a whole new range of clients, which was really exciting. And actually, one of the things I learned about myself is that I like building new things, and I also really like bringing people through. And I got to do all of that in that new role. That almost brings me up to where I am now. So I did that for a few years. And it was actually 2 years ago now that I transferred back out into the regions to create our new Watford office, which I'm super excited about. I think we've got really exciting times ahead. And what I've loved about the creation of the Watford office is that I've really been able to influence the priorities and the culture, and reflect that within the design of the new building. So if you come and have a look at our new building, you will see not only our geography and our clients reflected in the design, but you will also see certain values reflected as well, which are important to me, and at the heart of that is community, diversity, and also well-being. So that's it. That's the microwave version, Mike.
That's very good to condense those years into such a short span of time. I'm not going to refer to the length of service again, Caroline, don't worry.
No, don't do that.
But you've obviously taken some quite brave and bold steps throughout your career. It's really evident in what you said there. What one of those was the biggest step up and also the hardest to obtain?
So I'd have to say partner. So that's definitely the biggest hurdle in the business, with good reason, right? Because it's a step change. You move from being an employee yourself to being a part owner of the business and actually an employer. And that was one of the things that I remember really preoccupied my thoughts as I moved through, the enormous personal responsibility that I was going to have in terms of shaping the business and growing the business and providing for my team who were relying on me for employment. And so, as you would expect, the process of those coming through to the partner is demanding. If you picture the pyramid, you've got increasing competition in the business as you come up, and there has to be a very, very strong business need to create another partner slot. And in terms of what that partner process looks like, it's the preparation of papers which are well diligenced in terms of commercially what the incremental value in the business will be as a result of creating the partner case. But actually, and this might surprise some people, an awful lot of focus is given to self-awareness and personal development. And actually, although that partner process involved a huge investment of time from me and from others who helped me, so it's a very, very well supported process, it's actually a huge developmental opportunity. So if I look back at what I learned about myself as I went through that, some of those themes that came to the fore really inform the efforts that I make around my own personal development now. So it was a really big investment of time. There was a huge onus on me to demonstrate that business will be better off by making me a partner, but it was also a huge learning process. But so it's actually very, very worthwhile, and it's not just some boxing exercise. It actually creates value in its own right.
It's fascinating to hear that, Caroline. There's certainly things you said there that resonate with me. You know, as you say, you get towards the top of the pyramid and think when you kind of, the pyramid's here and you're at this kind of level, you kind of look at who's jockeying alongside you a little bit and like, how am I going to get to the top of that pyramid?
Yes, exactly. And I'm sure it's the same in a lot of businesses, isn't it? What I would say is that since making partner, I talked earlier about striking balance and juggling competing priorities, and that becomes even more so from my experience when you come through to partner, because your responsibilities grow. As I say, you become a part owner in the business, and therefore your sense of responsibility around running the business grows. and that then did lead to a tweaking of things at home. So my husband went part-time in order to enable me to fully perform and deliver as a partner. And as I look around me, people who sit at partner level, there's normally there's a change that's made there if you're trying to sustain a family role as well. And that might be through wider family support, or it might be through more childcare. People do it in different ways, but there's definitely a shift in the balance. And it's really exciting. It's demanding as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of gone on to something that will come into the next question, which is around, so like, what are some of the biggest blockers that you've come across in terms of progressing your career, and how did you navigate them?
So that's an interesting question, and you told me you were going to ask that one. And so the word blocker is interesting because, in all honesty, when I look back across my career, I can't really point to practical blockers as such. I can point to insensitivities in the system, if you like, sometimes. So, and I'm talking there particularly as somebody who was juggling family alongside career. So I can think of times when standing catch-up meetings that were actually quite important in terms of profile and learning were scheduled badly for me, and I had to have a voice and have some confidence in terms of saying that didn't work, and you what you're doing to accommodate me so that I can come along and I can contribute and I can learn. But whenever I flagged those things, it was always very well received. So I can't honestly point to blockers, but I can point to challenges. And when I think about those challenges, actually, I think about myself at the centre of them more than external challenges.
Right.
So one of the things that we talk about a lot in our personal development environment here is the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And what has really surprised me and continues to surprise me is how many people who, you know, outside in look really confident and successful, but actually they still have all of the insecurities and those little voices in your head say, gosh, I'm not sure if I'm good enough, and I'm not sure if I can do that. And I can tell you that plays out at all levels within PwC, just as it does in other places. So in terms of challenges along the way, I would definitely point to that kind of thing, which I would put in the bucket as me, really, and me having confidence to ask for help and push myself forward. And then I think the other challenge I'd point to is one that I've already alluded to, which is this thing around balance. And one of the most important lessons I've learned about balance is that it plays out differently for different people. There's no right answer to it. And for me, currently, balance is sort of about accepting. Again, I have this job, and I have this really lovely family that I want to be present for, not just physically, but also emotionally and mentally. And I have to be really flexible in when I'm on for each of those things. And it's easier for me to think fluidly about my life and how I deliver best against those things at different times. And, for example, to think really rigidly about the fact that my working hours are 9 till 5:30, and then I go home and see my kids. So that's what works for me. But lots of people play it differently. And I think, the central challenge I would point to is maintaining that balance in a way that works for you personally and enables you to just move forward in a happy, resilient way and as a whole person.
I think that's really important at the moment and very topical. I was actually talking to one of my friends in work yesterday who's just had another little one, so second child, and he said to me, look, you went through it because you've got 3 kids. How did you balance everything? And I said, I didn't. I said, and you kind of alluded to it, but being happy in the eye of the storm, and just being happy, being busy, and just accepting it. Sometimes it's just accepting it, isn't it?
Yeah, and trying to relish it, because, you know, how lucky are you if you've got a career that you love and a family that you love? So you have to try and revel in it.
Yeah, agree. But it's great that they went back to school.
Agree.
But you did, I won't move on to the next question we've got scheduled, because you mentioned imposter syndrome there, and that is something that we are coming across a lot. So how did you get yourself through imposter syndrome and out the other side of it, if you have at all?
So my own view on it is that you don't. So fundamentally, you're wired how you're wired. And the way that you deal with it is to be cognizant of it. And once you're cognizant of it, you can almost step outside of it. And then when it's happening, you can choose to behave differently in response to it. So an example of that would be, I think we can all picture situations or conversations that we've been involved in that have pressed buttons and pressed imposter syndrome buttons. And what you can choose to do in the moment is go, okay, I know why that's happening. I'm going to choose to not listen to that. And I'm going to do or say something that might feel slightly uncomfortable in the moment, but I very consciously know why I'm doing it and that it will get me to a better result. So I think it's all about self-awareness. And I think actually a lot of personal development ultimately is centered around self-awareness, because once you know yourself, you can then bring the best of yourself into the work environment and wider life.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think everyone can take that away. We've talked about challenges, and let's go a bit more euphoric. So let's talk about your greatest achievement and how you achieved it, Caroline.
So if I'm honest, and this is going to be a disappointing answer for you, but when I actually look back and think what was my greatest achievement at work, then to some extent I go back to the day that I saw my name in the newspaper, because that meant that I'd qualified as a chartered accountant, and that goes back a long way. For people who are considering entering the accountancy profession and qualifying as a chartered accountant, those exams are tough. And I remember it being tough. And from when I talk to our graduate trainees now, they tell me that it's still tough. And I think it's partly the exams themselves and partly just how much else you're trying to learn on the job while you're doing the exams. And my recollection of when we realised that it happened was my poor husband had an arm in a sling at the time and wanted to hug me and couldn't. And my mum actually fell to her knees. Such was the thing that these exams have been in our combined lives. So just a disappointing answer for you, but that's how the heart goes when I hear that question. If I look a little more aspirationally, then I would probably point to that business that I built in our financial services practice. And the reason why that excites me the most about, the thing that that's a highlight for me, the reason why it's that is because I loved doing it so much. So I got to combine my client skills with building something that really generated value, but also bringing people through. So a big part of building that business, developing a team of people, which is something that I love. I absolutely love doing. And I think that's an important point as well, because if you're going to do a demanding job, it needs to be something that you enjoy. Yeah. And so that's why that's a high point for me. It combines those.
I think that's a great answer, because it took us on the journey right from the start to the pinnacles of your achievements. This next question, so we could both answer this in a way, really, because you've been at PwC for your whole working career pretty much. I'm the same at Reed. So have you ever looked elsewhere? Don't worry, I won't tell anyone else at PwC. But have you looked anywhere elsewhere? And if so, why did you ultimately choose to stay?
So I have looked elsewhere. I haven't for a while. But when I was at the point of having newly qualified as a chartered accountant, I did look elsewhere. And the reason for that, well, it's probably partly because that's a natural exit point for the business. So we have a lot of people who come with us and train and qualify, and for reasons that are right for them, they decide to move out of the firm at that point and go into industry, which is actually fine with us if that's the right decision for them, because the shape of the business is a pyramid, and we love our alumni networks. We have a massive alumni network across the business. That's not a problem. So I first looked then, and then I also looked again when I was more of an experienced manager. And I think, again, that's a natural exit point from the business for some people. And also, I kind of was I had short spells at those grades where I felt I was stagnating. In truth, if I look back, probably wasn't stagnant for very long, but I like doing different things. So, it gave me time to think. And, the roles that I explored were with local employers out in industry. So they were kind of, you know, financial planning type roles, which actually were really interesting. They were good employers. I think at that time they would have given me a pay rise actually on what I was getting, so that would have been important to me. What prompted me to stay and not take advantage of those was because I think when you've got another serious option, you look harder and assess what you've got, because it's a big deal. That's that bit when the rubber bands on the road, isn't it? And when I looked around me, my assessment to me was that although the move out of professional services at that time would have given me a little step up, it would have also been a ceiling compared on what the potential was for me at PwC. So on both occasions, I decided to stay, and for me, I haven't looked back. Definitely the right choice. But yeah, I have looked elsewhere. Yeah,
it's interesting to hear you say that, because I think there's a lot of synergy with how you've approached your career and how I'm approaching mine as well. Is, you know, a few years ago I had an interview with PwC, and actually.
Did you really?
Yeah, with Keith.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, dropping a bomb here. I hope my boss is watching. But he actually really saliently put it to me. He said, "You've got to remember, you're very invested in Reed, and like you've just said there, it does make you reflect and really look at what you've got already." And much like you, Reed has always given me lots of different challenges, rooms to move. The people are fantastic. I think that's been a huge part of why I've stayed. And you're right, it might not be for everyone that they want to stay at their business, and it might be right for them to move. But if your business does give you those opportunities, I think make sure you explore those. Definitely.
Well, I think that's right, because the massive thing that you give up when you make a move is all the relationships and the networks that you've got. And it's not to say that it's, you know, that you always should stay because of that, but there's collateral that you've got when you've been in a place for a while that I think it's easy to underestimate.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move on from that. So let's go on to our next question. So how do you as a leader now ensure you are giving personal and professional development to your team?
So I think that comes down to making the time for people, which isn't always easy when you're busy. I think it's really easy for all of us to become very task focused and just about getting the job done, getting the deliverable out of the door, meeting deadlines. But it's a habit. It's a good working habit that I think you can deliver, and obviously calendar management helps you with it. But I have found that when you make proper time for people, they benefit, because you can make sure that the work that you're giving them is beneficial for them, and you create time to reflect on learning from it. So that's feedback, really. So they benefit from it, and then you get an immediate return on that, because the more you give, the more you get back. You also benefit, I think, from getting their ideas, and we do a lot of reverse mentoring here actually as well, because we see that as a huge learning opportunity, both sides of the relationship, the more junior person and the more senior person. So I think it's all about making the time and prioritizing it, which actually isn't that hard once you've done it a bit and you've seen the immediate return that you get for it. So yeah, I think it's all about creating that proper two-way relationship. Yeah,
absolutely. I can see you're really bought into the whole building people up, so it's really important that you have those. And reverse mentoring definitely is something that works well for that. Let's go a bit crystal ball. So the future of work, and that's really topical now with everything we've had to go through with this speed of change. How does the future of work look to you?
That is a huge crystal ball question for me, Mike, and I might throw that back at you to hear your perspective on it when I've given my answer. So let me answer that in a couple of ways then. So I'll tell you what I think of it, but I'll also tell you how we're approaching it as a firm. So as a firm, we are underway now with a project and some thinking that will be, you know, it will carry on for the rest of this year at least, and probably beyond, whereby we look carefully at the deal for our people. So we talk a lot about the deal for our people, and actually the future of work a lot about what our people want, because if we want to recruit and hold on to the best people, we need to offer a deal to them that meets their personal needs, and meets how they feel about the future of work and what that should look like. So we're investing a lot of time in trying to understand that, and you know, recognizing that there will be a lot of different views on that, and thinking through how as a firm we respond to that. And then also, you know, the other side of the equation is, how do we best service our clients, recognizing that their needs are changing quickly, they will be working differently, the world is changing really fast. And then what we will do, and what we are doing, is looking at how those two sides of the equation come together, and then in the middle of it coming together, what's the role of the office within that. So my own view, when I look at how I work best, is I think for starters, the office has an important part to play for me, just because of the value that I place on being with other people, and the energy that I get from that, and the sort of power of the accidental encounter, if you like, and that spontaneous collaboration that happens when two people are together. But also, I think the office, and we've very much built this into the design here, the office is a lot about collaboration and innovation, and technology enables that to some extent, but there's also something about getting people together. So it's a really complex question, and I don't think there's one answer, and I don't think there's a closed answer that's coming quickly. I think we've just started a whole new journey, and the shape of it will continue to evolve, which again I think is really exciting. And I think if I look at it more generally, the future of work, there's a skills piece to it. So there's what are the skills that we need in the business going forward, that you might be able to list out. That there's a culture side to it as well, and we've been on a journey culturally for many years now anyway, and you know, we've touched on some of the themes that really shape that around diversity and inclusion, and the importance of well-being and all of those types of things. But there's a coming together there too, and actually I am really hopeful that all of this will accelerate the overall inclusion agenda and support, you know, diversity in the business, which then makes businesses more successful, and opens up opportunities in a very fair way to a very wide range of people. So yes, a huge question, to which there's not a closed answer, and it's a road. But anyway, Mike, what's your answer?
I've been thinking, I was listening, but I've been thinking as well. But I think the really tangible thing that you can start talking about straight away is the role of the office. And I think the pendulum swings one way or another, but for my whole working career, everything has been talked about: more balance, more time at home. And then suddenly we got it, and everyone was, well, actually, no, I do still want the office. So the role of the office, in a strange way, is more important than ever. But I think fundamentally we will be there slightly less. I think we're going to have a lot of hot desking, smaller offices where, let's say, for instance, the whole of the business turned up, there wouldn't be room for everyone. But it's important that you have these connections. And I think the office desk, as it were, that could change. I envisage more lounges, something like that, maybe just open spaces for people to meet. I think that's quite exciting. And I think also, I'll touch on this, is that there's a lot of people who say, oh, the new generation coming through, they want to have everything, and they want to be able to work from home, they want this, and everyone's quite, well, I work hard. Maybe they've got it right. Maybe the youngsters have got it right about this balance and enjoying your life as well. So yeah, there's lots of interesting stuff going on. I can say as a business, we've looked at our property portfolio, and that's probably the key thing that we've done to make sure it's right. But also, and this is your show, Caroline, not mine, but I think you're right about the diversity and inclusion piece, is that everything we've been through has made us want to connect more. And I think it's going to be really important as we come out of this. I'm going to stop answering and stop asking me questions and putting me on the spot. But if we go, and you did mention it there about some of the skills that people are looking for. So with specific reference to practice, it's an ever-changing environment. So what soft skills would you say within practice are in demand right now?
So the first thing that springs to mind is digital. And there's digital in the sort of, I'm going to say, hard skill way, if you like, technologists. But there's something about being tech savvy or digital savvy, and just being able see the world through that digital lens, both in terms of needs of our clients, how we service our clients, challenges posed by digital. I think digital is such a big thing that's only going to grow, that being savvy and confident and fluent with it is really, really important. And then, going back to the fact that we're this client-centric environment, will get you so far, but we will remain a business that's all about relationships and creating human connection. So, I mean, we've talked about self-awareness in this. That's an ingredient. It's probably emotional intelligence and being able to form connections that are more than just transactional. And actually, emotional intelligence probably becomes even more important when you think about how many of the connections that we form will be digitally enabled, because, like I say, you need the layering up of the two, I think, to have successful relationships. So those are two areas that spring to mind. And then I suppose the third one would be something about agility. You look at the pace of change, you look at the change that's happening around us right now, and that's not going to slow down. As we said, we're on a journey. So there's something about agility and being open-minded, which I think is essential, for those who are joining the business world now.
Yeah. Thank you. And the last scripted question we've got for you, Caroline. This is talking about that virtual piece again. We often talk about water cooler moments. You can't have those when you're working from home. So how can you progress your career in the new virtually driven world?
So I don't think it's that much different to how you would progress your career in a face-to-face world, except you've probably got to be more on the front foot and more forthright and more comfortable with putting your hand up and reaching out to somebody, because there's a little barrier there, isn't there, at the moment, or in a virtual world, that you've got to reach over, which requires, you go back to that imposter syndrome that we talked about. It requires you to be a little bit more forward and a little bit less concerned and a little bit less prone to letting things come to you. And again, if I look back on my career, somebody at some point has said to me, like, always better to ask for forgiveness than permission. And that's always been really good advice, I think, probably even more so now. That sense of being a self-starter and reaching out and having the confidence to do it and to suggest and to ask. So it will be something around that, which isn't massively different to what would have been helpful previously, but it probably becomes essential now.
Thank you, Caroline. Right, well, that's all the questions we had scripted. We'll go to some of the questions in the Q&A. Please feel free to pop more in, guys. We've got a couple in there already. I think quite a salient one, actually, given it was International Women's Day this week, is have you found your journey to the top, having been a woman? Essentially, a really wide open question there, but how have you found that, Caroline?
So that kind of takes me back to your blockers question, and I haven't. Maybe I've been a bit blind to it. I haven't really felt myself that I've been that different or I've been that hampered by being a woman, albeit I can see that things have changed a lot along the way. So a really obvious example of that would be when I turned up for my first day back in Norwich office with my brand, and I wore a trouser suit, and I got taken aside because not in a an unpleasant way, but like I just needed to pay attention to the fact that I was the only female in the office wearing trousers, and I'd probably be better off wearing a skirt. So which is just incredible now, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the way things were. And again, there have been insensitivities, as I put it earlier. So I've experienced banter about working mums along the way, which actually has no bad intent to it at all, but it's almost that, so you see me as a working mum. Like, I don't see myself as a working mum, I just see myself as part of the team. So that's that kind of thing, which is subtle, but actually, hand on heart, I feel that we're a meritocracy, and my career, the moments when I've been challenged and the moments when I've been successful have been based objectively on my achievement. I think I've had a reality check along the way in terms of how busy I am and how fast I can move forward, given, you know, the importance for me, as I said, of being present at home properly. And I've had three lots of maternity leave along the way. And the one in the middle, I took nearly a year, and I found it really hard to adjust back into the business after that year, because I'd sort of tapped into other things within me that, which was really interesting, you know, me as a mum. And it's not that I couldn't bring that into work, it's just that I needed to get on with other things as well. So that's probably the biggest additional ingredient that I had being a woman. It wasn't so much being a woman, it was being a mum, and the emotional stuff, and the balance, and all of that kind of thing.
Okay, next one we've got here is for someone looking to get into practice, what advice would you give them if they were starting from scratch?
Well, it depends what scratch means, I suppose, and where you are with what you're doing. I definitely encourage you, you know, to be, if you're going to join as a grad or at A levels, up until the point where you're applying, I definitely encourage you to be studying things you enjoy, because that's how you'll be most successful, and that's how you'll get the best grades, which we will look at carefully. And I'd encourage you to seek out broad experiences, because that's the opportunity that you'll have when you join the firm. And that's what makes you a well-rounded person who can take the best insights and have the best conversations and relationships with clients, and be the most successful. So I would encourage you to think widely about what you're doing, and don't think in a narrow way about finance or tax or anything like that. And then, given how competitive the world is at the moment, I'd encourage you to seek out those extra experiences and opportunities that will differentiate you. You know, so the stories that you will tell at interview, for example, what story are you going to tell to show early signs of leadership potential, or early signs of innovation, or something like that, that when you look at the world around you is just going to make you more relevant? Yeah,
that's great. That's all the questions from the chat, unless there's any others. But no, Caroline, it was fantastic listening to you. I'm truly inspired, honestly. It's been some really good advice in there for people as well. I think it's PwC, and it's an exciting place to be now, especially with the new office as well. Is there anything you'd like to add before we move on?
I don't think so, other than just to say a really big thank you. As I say, it's an exciting time for me to be joining you as part of this event today, not only as the world starts opening up again, but also as we properly launch our office. I will take this opportunity to invite you in, Mike. So
yes,
given everything that you've said about the thinking that Reed's doing about the working environment, we will show you around. We have a lovely garden area. We have a well-being space. So there's some stuff that maybe we can share with you, and I'm sure some thinking you can share with us about the future of work. But other than that, no, I think it's just a really big thank you from me for having me. No
problem. It's been a pleasure, and we've had a comment from an attendee saying that you are a fab leader. So it's obviously come across on the meeting today. And yeah, more than happy to come in and see the office and talk about that. We're moving to a new office shortly, and we have got a living wall in there, which was a key thing for me after seeing your office in Cambridge. So
yes, of course.
Yes, so no, very excited about that. But yeah, thank you very much to you, Caroline. Absolutely fantastic to hear from you. Thank you to everyone who's attended. As said, a recording will be sent out to everyone who's attended, and to those who unfortunately couldn't make it for whatever reason. If you are looking to make a move in practice, or you are simply just looking for some career advice, please get in touch with us. You will receive a follow-up email which will have my details on. We'll also have the details of someone at PwC in case you are a grad looking to get in on their grad scheme, for instance. But thank you all. Have a very good end to the week, and stay safe and stay happy. Thanks, everyone.